So it may be true that the Statue of Liberty says, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free. But what it does not say is give me your drug dealers. It does not say give me your unvetted. It does not say give me people who have come here contrary to the laws of this country.
Fossella, and I'm proud to be joined by Staten Island's great elected officials and some of their representatives. We're here because we're responding to a report, and the truth is yet to be known, a report that they may have found upwards of a pound of crystal meth in this facility behind us a couple of days ago. That we don't know if it's a full migrant shelter, partial migrant shelter, but this is emblematic of the problem that many people on Staten Island have had for almost a year now. And if this is true, concerns are warranted. You know, just on the other side of Staten Island, people in Midland Beach and Aracar are still fighting, and in Travis, not too far from here, because they're concerned about the quality of life and the impact it's having on the residential neighborhood, on the families, on the kids. And if this is true, this is a disaster for the city, if you ask me, because the last thing we want popping up in a migrant shelter, that who knows what it costs per night or per year here, is to have crystal meth. So we want to raise this awareness, say this is intolerable if true, that we can't keep this going. We said last year, a few miles from here, that this whole process is unsustainable. Now everybody in the city, state, and looks like in Washington, D.C. agrees with us that it's unsustainable. Let's put a stop to this madness and move on from here. I want to call up first the gentleman who represents this area in the State Assembly, Sam Pirozzolo. Sam?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. So it may be true that the Statue of Liberty says, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free. But what it does not say is give me your drug dealers. It does not say give me your unvetted. It does not say give me people who have come here contrary to the laws of this country. We read in this article that the city is spending upwards of $92,000 per family to keep them up. You know, we used to have a program in this country. It was called Remain in Mexico. I'm sure that instead of spending $92,000 per family, the mayor could have hired immigration attorneys to pay for these people their legal processing while they remained in Mexico. What's going on here? It's crazy. The citizens of New York are paying for this. Joe Biden is not paying for this. The federal government is not paying for this. Governor Hochul is not paying for this. And I will go as far to say that Mayor Adams, you are not paying for this either. You want to know who's paying for this? We are paying for this. You are paying for this. I don't see why I have to be spending $92,000 per family when it could be achieved at a much less cost if they had stayed in another country, and that we could have picked up their legal bills at a much cheaper rate. So while we're unsure of what's going on here, I called the mayor's office this morning and I spoke to a government representative. And I said, you know, there's a problem here that we want to get this shelter closed. What's going on? And the term used, well, you know, we're in a crisis. So we're not in a crisis. And if you want to say crisis, it's your self-made crisis. But the mayor's office seems to think, and everybody I speak to, that just because they use the word crisis, we're all supposed to accept all of this crap that they're handing down with shelters and illegal migrants and anything else that they seem fit to do. This is not a crisis. The people of New York are paying for this. The government is not paying for this. Apparently 85% of the people in New York City want this policy reversed. So be unnoticed that we are revoking your guest policy here on Staten Island. We don't want to pay for it anymore. It would be totally different if the federal government is saying, here's the money, you know, so now what do? We're just hosting these people. If Kathy Hochul says, here's the money, so now what are we doing? We're just hosting these people. But that's not what is happening. So I'm going to say it again. We are paying for it, and we don't want to pay for it anymore. Governor Hochul spent the other day, last Sunday, on the news saying that on a federal level, Congress, the Republicans, need to work with the Democrats. So I'm saying to you, Governor Hochul, how about you as a Democrat working with the Republicans? You have the same one-sidedness here in New York State. And I'll repeat that to Eric Adams, too. How about you, Eric Adams, working with the Republicans? It's nice to point fingers everywhere else, but you have to start looking in the mirror and pointing fingers at yourself. So this is an unsustainable crisis that you have created. There are certainly better ways to spend this money. And let me also point out that the mayor himself yesterday left the country to go to other countries to stop this flow. So we've all recognized it's wrong. Knock it off, cut it out. It's the wrong thing to do. You know it. You're in a bad spot. Work with us. Let's get it fixed. You know, if this was drugs here, an arrest and a deportation are in order. So that's all I have to say now, other than stop. You know, the Statue of Liberty you want to talk about, your huddled masses, your poor, that's wonderful. That's not what's going on here. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblymember Pirozzolo. And just two points of reference, and before I introduce the next gentleman, who we stood in Travis, and last year we asked the city independent budget office then, when there were about 15,000 migrants in the city, to do an assessment, evaluation of what it would cost, and then it was about $500 million. That has now grown to about $12 billion, once again with no end in sight. And we also said that the right to shelter consent decree was sort of meaningless in this I don't want to say crisis, but in this position that tens of thousands of people coming, that the New York City residents and Staten Island in particular have to support it. Fortunately, we worked with our attorneys from Mark Fonte and Lou Gelomino, and we won in court. And our hope is the city follows that lead and ends this once and for all. And the guy who's been with us every step of the way is the councilman from this area, is David Carr. David?
Thank you so much, Borough President, for your leadership on this and so many issues on which we're fighting across our borough. I want to thank my colleagues, of course, as always, for their solidarity and partnership. The Borough President just referenced it. We won a vital decision in court recently that laid bare the plain truth, which is that the right to shelter does not extend to foreign nationals who are recently arrived in this country. There is no obligation, legal obligation on the part of the city of New York to open up over 200 shelters, including this one here, the Ramada Inn, which opened this May, and to house, to date, a little over 120,000 people, over 60,000 of whom are still in our shelters. It is unsustainable for all the reasons the Assemblyman has previously said, and it is not necessary. We do not need to have this shelter open to accommodate a legal obligation we do not have. So I'm once again, as I did when we won that wonderful case the other week, calling on the administration not to appeal the portions of that decision that reflect the right to shelter and its limitations. Because it's the very position that the city is taking in court in the Callahan consent decree renegotiation, which is to say that the right to shelter does not exist as many people have conceived of it. It does not extend to those who are coming from other places and simply arriving in our country, in our city rather, and asking for shelter and expecting shelter. That's why they're coming here. And until we start having our actions meet with our words, which is that the right to shelter does not extend to these folks, they're going to keep on coming. Because when they get here, they know they're going to have shelter. They know that they're going to have a school seat for their children if they have it. They know they're going to be given free health care. That is an irresistible incentive, and there's no end in sight. We had one of the worst days at the southern border with Mexico just the other week. So this isn't ending. The flow is not coming down to a trickle. So the only way that we're going to spare neighborhoods like Willowbrook the issue of what seems to be happening or could be happening here at the Ramada Inn, where it's going to become a source potentially of drug sales, is to close it down. So let's embrace the decision that was made the other day in the Villa case. I thank again Lou and Mark for their wonderful representation for us and for the community, and start to close these down. The mayor just instituted a 30-day eviction rule for those in the shelters. That's another step in the right direction. We need to wind these shelters down. The Ramada Inn, the two in Travis, Villa, Island Shores, and Midland Beach, the Hungerford School, and all the others across our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Carr. And this is a Staten Island issue. Although we're here in Willowbrook, it's a Staten Island issue. Another gentleman has been with us every step of the way. That's the Republican leader of the City Council in the South Shore, Joe Borelli.
Thank you. I'm certain about one thing. I'm certain that if you were a student at CUNY down the road over there, if you were a teacher at the school over there, if you were a firefighter at the firehouse over there, or you were a sanitation worker on the big white truck that just rolled down the street, and you were caught with a brick of crystal meth, you would be suspended and terminated immediately. Why can't I say the same thing with definitive results about migrants who are in this shelter? I'll tell you why. Because since 1989, this city passed a series, over 40 years, a series of sanctuary city policies that ended the cooperation between prosecutors, the NYPD, the Department of Corrections, and ICE enforcement agencies. Those policies all sum up to the fact that I can't tell you that despite this migrant was caught with potentially a pound of deadly drugs, that they will no longer be availed of the benefits of the city of New York. That's insulting to people who are here getting the benefits of the city of New York, whether you're an employee or a student or a staff member or just a regular average citizen. This is sort of the upside down approach to the migrant crisis that has begun over 18 months ago when we first saw this problem. And I'm glad the dam has finally broken. I'm glad Joe Biden and Kathy Hochul and Eric Adams have finally woke up and had their come to Jesus moment and realized, unfortunately it's so late, but they realized that the Republican Party's positions on the border and immigration have been reasonable. What they once told us was immoral is now the solutions that they're proposing to downgrade this supposed self-inflicted crisis to something more manageable. It's insulting. And the one thing that we can say after this incident was brought to light is that finally it's clear to everyone that the juice hasn't been worth the squeeze. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Borelli. Also representing the South Shore in the State Assembly is Assemblyman Michael Riley.
Thank you, Borough President. Thank you to my colleagues. Standing here united. You know, it's a common theme, and I've said it over and over again, the lack of transparency. There is no reason why an incident like this should be uncovered through a newspaper report that our electeds learn about it that way. How about having transparency from City Hall? There's no way that City Hall wasn't notified that this incident happened and that it was under investigation. I guarantee you there was a piece of paper that was written and it went straight to the mayor's office. Why are we hearing about it through the media? Why? Because they want to keep it under darkness. Just like they want to move the migrants into these shelters under darkness. It's time that we need to shine the light, and we're going to continue shining that light. You know, some of my colleagues touched on the lawsuit. Well, isn't it funny that the mayor has his team in Manhattan trying to win the same fight that we won here on Staten Island, but yet he's appealing it? Talk about talking out of both sides of your mouth. When are you really going to stick to what you really mean and follow through with it? Whether it's at the city level, state level, or the federal level. I think we're all sick and tired of being lied to. And we're all sick and tired of being misled. And this incident here highlights that. It's time we had enough. It's time for us to get clear. We will not stand for it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Assemblyman. In conclusion, we're here to represent and be the voice of the people of Staten Island. We're sympathetic to those who stood out every night in Midland Beach and, as they say in Aricoffer, St. John Villa, those in Travis and Tompkinsville. We're not going anywhere. We just think the city, state, and this country owe the people of Staten Island more. These are the folks who come and try to build an American dream, and they're being told you have to suck it up and and take all these migrants wherever they may come from for whatever reason. I just think it's wrong. Also representing, and they wanted to be here, but they had conflicts from Michael Tannousis' office. Assemblymember Tannousis, you have something to say?
Yes, please.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you, Mr. Borough President. My name is Ian Yonda, Chief of Staff to State Assemblyman Michael Tannousis, and I'm going to read a statement on behalf of him. This specific incident is a prime example of the dangers of having policies in place that allow unvetted individuals to enter our nation through an unsecured border and be housed in our neighborhood at the taxpayer's expense. Before running for the Assembly, I served our community as an assistant district attorney. During this time, I prosecuted the infamous Ramada Inn's murders that occurred inside this hotel right here. In that case, the hotel was being utilized as a homeless shelter. At the time of the incident, the defendant was visiting his girlfriend and her babies when he decided to stab them to death inside the hotel room. The security at this hotel was close to non-existent during that time. Apparently, the city of New York has not learned its lesson from that tragedy. The security precautions taken at these migrant shelters are either close to non-existent or being carried out by unqualified individuals. Although the federal government needs to secure our border to prevent unvetted people from entering our nation, the city of New York needs to take necessary steps to ensure the safety of our residents. To ensure proper safety, these migrant shelters should be removed from residential neighborhoods, period. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Representing Congresswoman Maliataka's office, do you want to say?
Thank you, Mr. Borough President, and for our colleagues in government for standing here today to raise awareness of this issue. My name is John Renato. I'm from Congresswoman Nicole Maliatakis' office, and I have a statement from the Congresswoman that I'd love to read. The mayor and the NYPD need to be transparent and give as much information as possible to the surrounding community, particularly the elected officials who represent this shelter, as to how these drugs made their way into this facility and who brought them there. We know from the Drug Enforcement Administration and Customs and Border Protection that large quantities of drugs travel from Mexico to the United States via our wide open southern border. Last week, I joined the bipartisan group of local colleagues in expressing concerns about crime in and around migrant shelters in response to the stabbing, domestic violence, drug use, and assaults against police that we've seen. In June, we saw 2 asylum seekers die of apparent overdoses outside of a mega migrant shelter in Brooklyn. It's ludicrous that taxpayers are footing the bill for these lucrative contracts that are placing shelters in their community and putting their public safety at risk. It's imperative for the mayor and law enforcement to answer the questions that we put forward and take our concerns seriously before residents are seriously hurt. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. That concludes. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Some of you have spoken pretty definitively that it is connected to migrants. Others are couching your language. If it turns out to be just one, let's say one migrant, for instance, are you worried that the rhetoric will only further polarize this already polarized issue?
It's polarized in part because we think it's wrong, and we just keep being told you got to take it, and we had no recourse, which is why we had to sue, and fortunately we won at the trial level. And if you heard definitively that we all want the city not to appeal and suspend, modify, abolish, whatever, the right to shelter for tens of thousands of people who come here, many of whom come here illegally. In terms of going forward, let's wait for all the facts to come out. And we just think that if you create a migrant shelter, and if in fact it becomes, if it's true, it's a pound of crystal meth, which has a street value depending on the quality of tens of thousands of dollars potentially, it's not just for individual use. At that point, it becomes a drug dealing operation. And on the other side of Staten Island at St. John's Villa, the concern is about the kids. Yes, the residents, but the kids who go to school. So if in fact migrants are selling or producing or manufacturing or distributing drugs, that's an issue and that's a concern. And I don't care who wants to polarize it as fear. I don't want that in my backyard, and the people of Staten Island shouldn't have it in their backyard.
Have any of you gotten further information from the precinct commander, from the narcotics boss, that takes it a little further as to what we now know about this? Do you know more than what's already out there?
All we know is that my understanding is they no longer test on the scene because of the concern about fentanyl, and it's being in the process of being tested for the substance and the quality of the substance.
And then lastly, there's been, one of you referenced the murder here a couple of years ago. There's also been drug arrests here in the past. Have any of you been out here following any of those other drug busts or the murder in particular?
Well, yeah, Michael Tannousis was actually one of the ADAs on the job. We trust the one.
That was the second one. You may not have been
on the regular level. We have I do personally. If anybody disagrees, we have great confidence in the NYPD for doing the job. We have the best police force in the world, and we know this stuff happens. We have a good local prosecutor. So in a normal situation, we leave justice to be administered in the right sort of way. What's unique here, if it is true, is we're paying taxpayer-funded subsidies to this hotel for a migrant shelter that may be potentially a drug distributor. That is a concern to ours, and we're raising that concern to we're not going to tolerate it.
Can I add a bit to that?
Sure.
If you don't mind. So you asked if we're concerned about blowback, right? So I can say that the mayor and his administration read the same newspaper that I read. And if there was any question about this being a drug or not being a drug, we should have been contacted. 7 o'clock this morning, I'm on my cell phone talking to someone from Intergovernmental Affairs, and I sent them the article. They read the article. So if you're saying, am I concerned about blowback? I'm not. Because what this is another opportunity for all of us to point out that this administration has chosen the wrong path as far as housing migrants, and the Biden administration has chosen the wrong path as far as letting migrants into this country when it was being done successfully in other ways. $12 billion buys a lot of immigration attorneys.
What feedback did you get during that time about the incident in particular?
So I'm going to characterize, and I say this politely, but I was told to go pound salt. It was above my pay grade, is basically what it came out to be. All right?
Can I just touch on that for a second? When you asked about if anybody was out here when those murders happened or whatever, if you look at what's happening across New York City, and actually there was just an article yesterday up in Colony, upstate outside of Albany, around our hotels that are turned into migrant centers, there's been nothing but an increase in crime. So with that increase of crime, whether it's assaults, whether it's weapons, whether it's rapes, and now possibly drug dealing, that's why people are up in arms. That's why people are outside these hotels saying that we had enough, because the incidents are happening more frequently, and it's happening, and the more dangerous incidents are occurring. So I think that's why you're seeing us here today, and it's to stop it from happening and moving forward.
And just the final word on that particular point, when those murders took place, the shelter that was in operation here closed. So maybe that's a precedent to follow if the tests come back as we fear with a positive result.
Do you fear the administration is going to try to sweep this under the rug so they don't have to close this facility?
You're asking me, or they already have? All we want, I think you hear, is we oppose the policies fundamentally, and in these cases, and it seems to happen more and more frequently, all we want is transparency and the right decision to be made. So we're hopeful that anybody who's in authority hears our plea, because we're not here on behalf of we're here on behalf of 500,000 people who are genuinely concerned and deserve the best from the city and the state and the federal government. So that's our plea. Unless anybody else.
At St. John Villa, there was some independent security measures, I guess. Is there any discussion about any sort of, if not working directly with the city, any way to increase security at any of these facilities, or has there been any discussion with police about that?
And if you've been by Villa, it looks like a mini war zone over there. The number one responsibility of the government, city, state, federal, is to protect innocent people. Personal security should always be paramount. So once again, if, as Assemblyman Riley say, in other parts of the state where these hotels exist, and it's just not outside Albany, it happened in Erie County a few weeks ago, where there's rapes and assaults and a lot of other stuff, bad stuff going down in these, the first question we should ask is a legitimate one: how do we keep the surrounding community safe? And is security or private security warranted? Once again, the police do their job, but in many respects, they're spread pretty thin. So anything that can be done to ensure the residents, look, we're 100 feet from somebody's house. Those people deserve the very best. Anybody else? I just want to thank the elected officials and their representatives for being so responsive and coming out on short notice for this. So thank you all very much. Appreciate it.